Time now for our hits and misses of the week. Kim, start us off.
So, Paul, the Wall Street Journal just finished its first ever ranking of the 20 largest airports. They looked at everything from on-time reliability to security wait times, restaurant reviews, and also an extensive survey with readers. My miss is going to the city whose 3 airports managed to all come in dead last, which would be New York City. Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark were all ranked the worst of the worst. You know, New York is lucky because a lot of people need to go there for work, but it should be concerned when growing numbers of people don't want to go there because it's just so hard to get there.
Bill.
Paul, a miss to Big Mother, otherwise known as the District of Columbia government. There's been a playgroup for 2-year-olds for 45 years on Capitol Hill, just run by the parents. And they recently got a visit from the Office of State Superintendent for Education saying, we're going to regulate you now. Their crime was to actually draft some sensible rules, contact information, so you can't bring sick kids to the thing. I mean, this is literally what they mean when they say the nanny state running amok.
All right. Kate.
Paul, this is a hit this week for Naomi Rao, who Trump appointed to the D.C. Circuit Court this week, but she's been overseeing the White House's deregulatory campaign and hasn't really gotten much attention. But her office announced in October that the Trump administration had repealed that year 12 rules for every one issue, with 176 deregulatory actions and billions of savings in the economy. She's overseen one of the biggest deregulatory efforts in history, and cheers to her on her new adventure at the D.C. Circuit.
Could be potential Supreme Court material. Dan.
Well, you know, the Trump administration gets showered with misses for its continuing war with the media, mostly the White House media, I must say. But this is a big hit for Vice President Mike Pence, who at a big Asia summit in Singapore this past week took Myanmar leader Suu Kyi to task for 2 jailed Reuters reporters there who have been imprisoned for reporting on the atrocities committed against the Rohingya. It's a big hit for Mike Pence for raising this issue about these 2 imprisoned reporters.
All right, and if you enjoy the Journal editorial report, be sure to join us on Fox Nation for our daily deep dive. Every afternoon, we'll assemble 4 of the smartest minds in the business to analyze the most important story of the day. One story, one panel, unparalleled expertise. It's only on Fox Nation, so sign up now. That's it for this week's show. Thanks to my panel and to all of you for watching. I'm Paul Gigot. Hope to see you right here next week.
We start with the Fox's alert because Florida has a new senator. 12 days after Election Day in a recount that stretched on almost as long. Incumbent 3-term Democratic Senator Bill Nelson has conceded. He did so in the last hour to his opponent, Republican Governor Rick Scott. Hello, everyone, and I'm Eric Shawn. This is a brand new hour of America's News Headquarters.
Hello, Eric, and I'm Arthel Neville. Well, Bill Nelson releasing a video in the last hour after 46 years in public service. His defeat marks the first time in a century that Florida will be represented by 2 Republican senators at the same time.
Well, things worked out a little differently than Grace and I had hoped, but let me say I by no measure feel defeated, and that's because I've had the privilege of serving the people of Florida and our country for most of my life, and I don't think anybody could have been as blessed. It's been a rewarding journey as well as a very humbling experience.
President Trump reacting as well, tweeting from day one, Rick Scott never wavered. He was a great governor and will be even a greater senator in representing the people of Florida. Congratulations to Rick on having waged such a courageous and successful campaign. Phil Keating has been tracking all of this. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And as Senator Nelson saying, it's not
has a couple of months to serve out his term in Washington, and he will do that as well. But after nearly 2 weeks of counting and recounting of votes by machine and by hand, it is all now finally over for the state of Florida. It is done. All that's left is Tuesday morning in Tallahassee, when the numbers are actually made truly official, when they are certified. Let's take another listen of Senator Nelson's statement. This was the first videotaped concession of his long political career.
I was not victorious in this race, but I still wish to strongly reaffirm the cause for which we fought. a public office is a public trust.
And Republican Governor Rick Scott will now be headed to Washington. He released this statement a couple of hours ago. Quote, "I just spoke with Senator Bill Nelson, who graciously conceded, and I thanked him for his years of public service. This victory would not be possible without the hard work of so many people. Now the campaign is truly is behind us, and that's where we need to leave it." In the also close race for governor, which also went to a machine recount, Republican Ron DeSantis will be the state's next governor, beating Democratic Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum. Gillum conceded last night.
And now that we are rounding that process out, RJ and I wanted to take a moment to congratulate Mr. DeSantis on becoming the next governor of the great state of Florida.
And Ron DeSantis tweeted, quote, "This was a hard-fought campaign. Now it's time to bring Florida together." That is absolutely one of the closest midterm elections in Florida history, possibly of all-time closeness. Here's how close it was. Out of 8.2 million votes cast in Florida, Scott wins over Nelson by 10,000 votes. And in the governor's race, DeSantis wins by 32,000. Eric Arthel.
Nail biters indeed. Phil Keating, thank you very much. Eric.
Oh, back in Washington, President Trump had a spirited and feisty exclusive interview on Fox News Sunday. The president touting his record despite the Republicans losing the House in the midterms. He was interviewed by anchor Chris Wallace on a wide range of issues, including the strong economy, the Mueller probe, the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, and the possibility that some cabinet members could soon be replaced.
The White House is running like a well-oiled machine. It's doing really well. I have great people. I will make some changes, but not very many. I'm very happy with my cabinet, other than, a couple of exceptions, and even there I'm not unhappy. And I will tell you that it's so wrong. The reporting about me is so wrong. I'm loving what I'm doing.
Ellison Barber is live in the North Lawn of the White House with more. Hi, Ellison.
Hi, Eric. Over the summer, President Trump reportedly asked his chief of staff, John Kelly, to be his chief of staff through 2020. Today, in that interview, President Trump would not guarantee that.
Look, we get along well. There are certain things I love what he does, and there are certain things that I don't like that he does that aren't his strength. I have 3 or 4 or 5 positions that I'm thinking about. Of that, maybe it's going to end up being 2, maybe, but I need flexibility.
There's been a lot of rumor and speculation about the fate of the president's secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. President Trump says right now, Kirstjen Nielsen is not tough enough at the southern border.
What are the chances she'll be DHS secretary?
Well, there's a chance, but there's a chance everybody. I mean, that's what happens in government. You leave, you make a name, you go. I like her very much. I respect her very much. I'd like her to be much tougher on the border, much tougher, period.
The president talked about issues well beyond the White House gates. President Trump confirmed that the U.S. received a recording of Jamal Khashoggi's murder. He says his team briefed him on it, but he did not personally listen to the tape because, in his words, it is a suffering tape, violent and terrible. The CIA has reportedly concluded that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered Khashoggi's murder. The State Department says the U.S. government has not made a final conclusion in regard to the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. The Crown Prince denies any involvement. When pressed on what happens if the Crown Prince is actually lying, President Trump said this.
Well, will anybody really know? All right. Will anybody really know? But he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
The president told reporters this weekend that there would be a full report on the death of Khashoggi by Tuesday. Eric?
All right, Ellison, thank you so much. We'll be awaiting that. Meanwhile, we'll have more of Chris Wallace's exclusive interview with the president throughout this hour, including more on the president's thoughts about those reported CIA findings on the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Arthel?
Eric, this is a Fox News alert on deadly California wildfires burning for more than a week at both ends of the state. Two massive fires claiming 79 lives so far. The number of people missing topping a staggering 1,300. President Trump yesterday touring the destruction from both fires.
We're all committed. I'm committed to make sure that we get all of this cleaned out and protected. We've got to take care of the floors, you know, the floors of the forests. Very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. And to see what's happened here.
Anita Vogel is live in Malibu, California, which has been devastated by the Woolsey fire. Anita?
Good afternoon, Arthel. And we're in the Point Dume neighborhood here in Malibu. The president spent a lot of time here yesterday. In fact, he was on this street, Dume Drive. Take a look behind me. You can see here the massive destruction. It's just house after house that has been burned to the ground here. And the president saw that. But in the remarks you just heard from the president, that was when he was up in Northern California at the campfire in Paradise. That particular piece of sound, the president was talking about Finland. Now, people are aware that the president has been critical of the way in which California has managed its forests, but most people say they don't really care so much about politics right now. They've got their mind on one thing.
Did he really sees what's going on here and tries to help a lot of these, all of us, try to help us, you know. All we want to do is go home and even if it means just going for a little while to see what our place is, to see if it's standing. That's all.
And again, the focus today is going to be in Northern California on that campfire where we know that there are more than 1,000 people missing, and surely the death toll will rise there, and the suffering is going to continue there, Arthel, for quite some time.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Very, very unfortunate. So, Anita, what's happening in Malibu where you are right now?
Well, I can tell you here in Point Dume on Dume Drive at 2 p.m. local time today, which is just less than an hour from now, residents of this neighborhood are going to be allowed back in. Again, take a look behind me. Unfortunately, this is what they're going to find. Some people are going to find that their house is completely gone, and that's the case all up and down this street. But, you know, others were okay, and I want to show you behind me what's going on here. We have the local cable company here, and they are right now connecting the cable and telephone lines for residents in this neighborhood and a few other neighborhoods who will be allowed to return home today. They won't have power. They won't have that for quite some time, but some people will have telephone and cable. And again, those residents coming back into this neighborhood in about 45 minutes, it could be kind of an emotional time for them. As I can tell you, coming back here live to me now, most residents on this street will find that they have nothing. Arthel, back to you.
Anita Vogel, thank you very much. They're in Malibu. Eric?
Well, about 3,000 migrants have reached the southern border. We're told they're seeking asylum in our country. Still ahead, we'll have a live update from the ground on the latest on that.
Plus, growing questions of General Matthew Whitaker could jeopardize the special counsel's Russia investigation, as the president claims he had no Whitaker, or he didn't know that he had publicly criticized it. Our legal panel weighs in.
It wasn't a big deal. You know, they make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it.
President Trump saying he, quote, very easily answered written questions from special counsel Robert Mueller. This as he faces backlash over his claim that he was unaware that Matthew Whitaker had publicly criticized the Russia investigation before picking him to replace Jeff Sessions as acting attorney general. Here's the president in an exclusive interview with Fox News Sunday.
If Whitaker decides in any way to limit or curtail the Mueller investigation, are you okay with that? Look, it's going to be up to him. I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person, a very respected person. He's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right. But you won't overrule him if he decides to curtail. I would not get involved.
Let's bring in our legal panel. Bob Schulk is a defense attorney and former prosecutor. Also with us is Richard St. Paul, also a defense attorney and member of the Republican Lawyers Association. Good to see both of you.
Good being here.
So, Richard, I'll start with you since you're right here with me. Is it that President Trump answered the questions, but then his lawyers will edit those answers before they're submitted to Mr. Mueller?
I mean, it's a very likely scenario. That's why you have the lawyers in the room, of course, to help you answer the questions the best to your ability. The other issue is whether or not these answers were under oath. If they're not under oath, you don't have to worry about the president being tripped up and saying that he lied under oath and therefore could be subject to federal charges. So these are just questions and answers that aren't under oath. Then the president has no fear. He can honestly answer those questions and not worry about being tripped up, because part of the argument was if the president speaks to Mueller directly and he says something inadvertently that isn't the truth, could he then be charged with lying to prosecutors? Here, we don't have to worry about that if these answers aren't under oath.
Right, I agree. And the thing about this, at this stage we're at, is that according to everyone, this investigation is coming to a close. So the thing that concerns Mr. Trump's attorneys is going to be, Mueller knows the answers to the questions he's giving. So they need to be very meticulous in the way that they answer them. And as Richard said, the lawyers are going to edit these answers meticulously so that they do not expose him to any type of prosecution for the limited questions he's answering. Because remember, he's only answering questions from anything prior to the election and as president-elect. He's not answering any questions as it pertains to obstruction of justice charges, because I don't really think he needs to answer those questions, because I think Mueller could prosecute if he so chose or bring charges based upon tweets potentially or other public statements that have already been made.
So a couple things. So why wouldn't these answers, the president, be under oath when providing these written answers?
Well, typically what we do is we have, in lawyer talk, we have something called interrogatories, where we send somebody questions, they have to answer it under oath as, basically swearing to tell the truth. But as I said, you don't want the president to be tripped up and face criminal charges simply because he inadvertently answered a question incorrectly. And so his lawyers will screen those answers and provide them. But there's no information that I've seen that says that these answers are under oath. The other issue is that will the president answering these questions actually lead to the winding down of the investigation? I'm not so sure that will happen, especially since Democrats have now taken over Congress and have promised investigations into this probe.
So then, Bob, do you think that Mr. Mueller will provide more, additional questions for the president to have to answer? And Chris Wallace pointed out to the president in his interview that, Mr. Mueller could subpoena the president to go speak to him face to face. President Trump says that's not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously lawyer games right now, whether or not he's going to subpoena, whether Mr. Trump how he would respond to the subpoena, whether or not during the course of any conversations with him, his lawyers would advise him to plead the Fifth Amendment, which is the right against self-incrimination if he feels as if he could incriminate himself. So this is going to be, think about it. When they submitted questions, Mr. Trump's lawyers responded, these are the questions we're willing to answer. There's negotiations that are happening that we aren't obviously privy to. So it'd be very interesting to see if maybe they've already agreed, hey, we'll answer these questions and that'll be it. But as Chris pointed out in his interview, listen, he could subpoena you and no one's giving you any assurances at this point that we know about.
But the issue with the subpoena is going to be that the president's legal team are going to fight those vigorously. And you're going to end up before the court trying to decide whether the subpoena should be quashed and basically saying, no, he doesn't have to respond to the subpoenas, or if he does have to respond to the subpoena, that's going to be up to the court. Now, that battle will take months to decide, potentially.
Potentially years.
Yeah.
The one thing that we know as lawyers is that one thing that doesn't move quickly are the wheels of justice. They take forever. So, Bob, I'll stay with you on this one. What about the claims or concerns that the acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker will withhold portions of Mr. Mueller's report from Congress once it's finalized and not release it in its entirety? We're in the speculation point, and it's way too early because we have no idea when this report is going to be finalized, when it's going to be published, what's going to be published, whether anything's going to come from it. So to sit here and speculate that he's going to hold something back and it's going to cause the Democrats in the House to want to start getting all of their subpoenas ready and getting all of their questions that they're going to want to try to bring it out so the public sees the majority of it. Again, it's way too speculative for me to sit here and say what he's going to do versus not going to do based upon a prior statement that he gave that we don't. And again, the context of it, was he stating that as a legal opinion or a personal opinion as to this probe that Mueller has? I know everyone's saying that he stated that he didn't think it was an appropriate investigation, or that some people seem to think that he's pro-Trump here. Again, what's the context of it? When was it said? How was it said, et cetera? Maybe it was his legal opinion. I don't think legally this should be happening. We don't know.
Well, look, here's the thing. You can't tell how long this investigation is going to take, or whether, like I said, whether it's winding down or not. We just don't know. But what we can say is that the president was an important piece into this investigation. So that gives the ability, I think, of Whitaker to say to Mueller, wrap it up. Let's go. You got the president's information. You have a lot of information already. Write your report so we can then move forward. Because I think the country is ready, and the president, of course, is ready to move forward with this investigation. We have other things we need to focus on, like infrastructure.
Any sense that it's going to wrap up soon?
I sense that there will be pressure on Mueller to wrap this up soon, yeah.
All right.
Tough to say.
Tough to say. You know what's not tough to say? Is that the Saints will smack down on the Philadelphia Eagles today, Mr. Shaw.
I hope not. I hope not.
No, you just wait for it, okay? Wait for it. Count on it.
If I can say my Giants didn't win today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Eric.
Well, Arthel, there are some new proposed rules for dealing with sexual misconduct claims on campuses. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos unveiling the new policy that narrows the definition of sexual misconduct in a departure from the broader Obama-era outline. The older rules define, quote, unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, while the new proposals say the conduct has to be, quote, severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. Advocacy groups are slamming the proposed policy. They claim it will discourage victims from coming forward and say it will make it easier for allegations to be ignored.
And after all the death and devastation, now a new threat from the wildfires raging in California. We'll have those details for you next.
And what a spirited interview it was with President Trump. He was on Fox News Sunday talking to Chris Wallace, speaking about that horrible killing of Saudi columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The president says he expects to know more very soon.
Northern California now has some of the worst air quality in the world. This according to multiple sources, including the EPA. And it's thanks to the smoke from the deadly wildfires raging there. If you take a look, you can see just how thick that smog is. Meteorologist Adam Klotz is in the Fox Weather Center with more. Hi, Adam.
Hey there, Arthel. Unfortunately, the conditions for wildfire remain in place across Northern California. Everything you're looking at in the pink highlighted area behind me is a red flag warning, which means the humidity is low. Still a little bit of wind out there. Air very, very dry. So we're going to continue to see fires right around Paradise, California, which is where you saw the campfire and the surrounding areas. The winds have actually backed down a little bit. So not those 60, 70 mile an hour winds that really spread the fire quickly, but still enough wind that the smoke right around those fires has been seen drifting down to the Bay Area, getting into San Francisco and Oakland. And you just look at the topography here. There is a valley right down the center of California. If you're not familiar, these are Sierra Nevadas mountains off to the east. On the western side of the state, you've got the coastal ranges. All of that smoke gets stuck in that area, and it can become very difficult for it to get out. And that means if you're in that area, it's tough to breathe. Just really nasty conditions. And it's going to take a good rain to probably knock all that out of the air. We're still several days away. So the air quality is going to stay low, and the fire conditions are going to stay high. Our humidity is low right now as you're looking at spots, everything here in the brown and the orangish color. That is about 25% humidity. So the air is dry. No rain on the horizon for now. But as we begin to look forward, eventually we are going to see a little bit of relief. It takes a little while. So I run you through the rest of the weekend, Sunday into Monday. The timestamp's in the corner. This is a future model. By the time we get going into Wednesday and into Thursday, there's going to be a large system rolling on shore, Arthel. Probably not great for holiday drivers as you get closer to Thanksgiving, but something to be thankful for, because this rain is going to stretch from Northern California, eventually all the way down through Southern California, give some of those firefighters, knock down some of that those particles in the air. It's going to be a good rain that state really needs.
Yeah, but Adam, that's good news for the rain, and the particles in the air will be knocked down, like you said. But does that mean automatically, once it starts raining, that the air is clear for those who have respiratory issues?
It should take down most of it. It just depends on if we're able to get those fires under control during that time, because obviously once the rain moves through, if the fires are still there, it's still going to be a problem. But that should take care of most of it right away.
All right. Respiratory issues is what I was trying to say, Adam
Yeah,
Klotz. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, but he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
That's President Trump, of course, in an exclusive interview on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace, talking about the apparent gruesome, cold-blooded murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. You know, there have been allegations that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered that hit. Khashoggi was last seen entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, in early October. The president says he does expect a full report on the dissident's killing. Some lawmakers are calling for a tougher stance with Saudi Arabia.
More than anything else is this really needs to alter our relationship. On its own right, we should be bringing an end to the war in Yemen, but we should also recognize that we do not share the same values with Saudi Arabia.
It ought to involve what we do in Yemen. It's a horrible situation there, and the Saudis have not been making it better. In fact, they have not done some of the commitments that they have said that they would do already. So I think it would start with our involvement with them.
So what should the president do? Susan Fricio joins us, chief congressional reporter at the Washington Examiner. So, Susan, that new report is expected, we think, tomorrow or Tuesday, outlining some intelligence findings. So how does the president balance this diplomatically?
Well, that is a great question. He is in a tough position because the U.S. has long, desired to have a strong alliance with Saudi Arabia for a number of really important reasons, not just its oil output, but also its stabilizing force in a very unstable region and as sort of a counterforce against Iran, which is, can be a global threat in the future, at least. So, it's something he's going to have to figure out how to balance, and he's going to sort of be forced to do something because Congress is going to probably push for a stronger reaction than what we have so far, which are these sanctions against 17 individuals so far. They're going to want more.
He was asked about that in the interview with Chris Wallace. Let me play you some of that tape and get your reaction.
So if Congress were to move to either try to cut off any U.S. involvement in the war in Yemen or to block any arms sales, you won't go along with it?
Well, I want to see Yemen end, but it takes two to tango. Iran has to end it also. And Iran is a different country than it was when I took over. It's far weakened because of what I did with the so-called Iran deal, Iran nuclear deal, which was one of the great rip-offs of all time. But I want Saudi to stop, but I want Iran to stop also.
There, he was kind of shifting it over to Iran,
Yeah.
and in the past he's talked about the billions of dollars in defense contracts.
Well, it's not just he's not just shifting it against Iran. He's making a valid point here, which is that you turn on Saudi Arabia and then you empower Iran, and that's not a great outcome either for anybody. And he's really stuck here, and it's going to get very interesting because not only are people getting impatient over in the Senate, and that's a lot of Republicans, Lindsey Graham, Republican, and others who want to push for stopping arms sales, who want to just really take a stronger stance against Saudi Arabia. But now you have, as you just heard Adam Schiff, the House is about to become a Democratic majority House, and they are going to push for a stronger outcome here. And I think the key here is Yemen. There's so many people have been clamoring for that to end, for our involvement in assisting Saudi Arabia there. It's considered a humanitarian crisis. But then you just heard the president say, well, what about Iran's involvement? This is all, the global chess game here we're talking about, but it's an important one. And the president makes important points here, but the Congress here is going to play a big role. Will they step in and stop the arms deals that Saudi Arabia is counting on, the billions in dollars of arms sales coming down the pike? That's looking like a real possibility.
Do you think they would do that, especially under a Democratic Congress? Or could they do that?
In the Senate, they're definitely talking about doing that. And there have been several votes taken in the past about that, and they've been close votes. But that was before Khashoggi's murder. So now the question is, how will that look in the new Congress? this is getting very interesting now. I think the key here, Sean, Eric, will be what happens this week with this report. What specifically are we going to hear? It sounds like it's going to really implicate the Crown Prince, and that the president's going to have to accept that reality now, even though he's saying we don't have a final outcome yet. And then what will he do? The Congress will watch to see what the president does, and if they feel like it's not strong enough and that it's just sticking with these sanctions and nothing more, then you're going to see movement here. I think we'll see movement first on the Yemen issue and then on the arms sales. It's coming down the pike, and it's probably going to get very interesting right at the start of the 116th Congress in January.
And we've also, the military apparently has also not refueled some of the Saudi warplanes that have been engaging in the bombing.
In the Yemen,
especially critics
very
saying
critical
of civilian areas and this sort of thing. So potentially there could be a deal then in Yemen over this, or other sanctions and harder actions in terms of cutting off some things from Saudi Arabia. But in terms of what the prince has said, during this interview with Chris, the president said several times that the prince has denied any involvement, said that he was not involved. They have charged these suspects, some are under the death penalty. We'll see if that even actually occurs. And he talked about that tape, this horrible intercepted tape of the murder that the Turkish authorities apparently have. He said the intelligence of the American intelligence has it. Here's what the president said about that when Chris asked him.
We have the tape. I don't want to hear the tape. No reason for me to hear the tape.
Why don't you want to hear it, sir?
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on the tape without having tape.
So how do you balance this personal relationship with the prince when you know what's on the tape? And during the interview, the president repeatedly said, well, you never know. And would not directly say that the prince apparently may have been lying.
I get the sense that his view of this is evolving and that he's going to have to take a harder stance this week if that final report indeed does say in a very firm way that the Crown Prince was knowledgeable and was involved in this. I think you'll hear the president change his tune a little bit, but you can also hear over the course of the past week that his view on this has been evolving and that he's really not happy with the Crown Prince and what's going on over there. So, whether or not he listens to the tape matters probably a lot less than what actions he's going to take after this week.
That's true. The world will be watching. We'll see indeed what that report says exactly, and if it does implicate the Crown Prince completely. Susan Ferruccio, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Of course. Marthel?
Well, Eric, thousands of Central American migrants arriving in Tijuana, Mexico, seeking asylum in the U.S. We are live on the ground with the very latest.
Plus, Vice President Mike Pence, who was at the Apex.
We have a tremendous military force on the border, on the southern border. We have large numbers of people trying to get into our country. I must say the reason it's increased so much is because we're doing so well as opposed to the rest of the world. And if you look at south of our border, is not doing so well.
Now, that's President Trump yesterday on ordering the deployment of U.S. troops to the southern border, as the first wave of those migrants from Central America are now waiting to apply for asylum in our country. Mexican officials say they are not able to handle the influx of migrants, with thousands more expected to come to the border in the next few days. And in Tijuana, some residents are angry, and they want the migrants to go home. William Lajeunesse is live with the Caravan in Tijuana, where he has seen this firsthand. Hi, William.
Well, Eric, let me set the scene for you right now. We're on a side street just about a block from the migrant shelter. Now, we're going to pan over here and show you the police line. Now, what this was like 90 minutes ago, a very physical confrontation between a rally who opposes the caravan, the migrant caravan, and they ran headlong into this police barricade, the cement rails, the steel fence, the riot police. They bended but did not break. Now, let me explain the point of view of those who oppose the migrant caravans. Number one, they say, hey, they entered Mexico illegally, violently, at the Guatemalan border. They fear they're going to stay here, take jobs, depress wages, and bring in crime, gangs, prostitution, and drugs.
We do know of incidences here in Tijuana and in other cities that some of these people that are coming into with these caravans are committing crimes. And so we are protesting. I am protesting.
Now, about a mile away, there was a counter demonstration. Those supporting the American Caravan and the LGBTQ community, a smaller group who basically ran away when this larger group confronted them. Now, in Tijuana, they say it's a welcoming community for immigrants, that they'll grow the economy, and it's their responsibility to protect the caravan.
They have to be more tolerant because there's a lot of people, a lot of Mexicans that go to the United States also.
So there are about 6,200 migrant caravan members here right now. The state expects another 3,000 over the next several days. Obviously, they've filled the one shelter down the street. They spilled into other shelters as well. Now, the migrants say they're not here to bring violence. The majority are just looking for a better life. But the U.S. has essentially closed the border, obviously not taking any asylum claims, or very few, about 30 a day. But that's about a 5-week wait for people who arrive even today. So some are likely to stay here and work, make some money, and try crossing the border later.
I feel sad though, because we're not all like that. We're not all came inside to like violently or aggressive. We try to do it all like in peace.
So the real question is, how long does this go on? Because it's going to probably normalize the situation in several days, maybe, Eric, as people here realize they can't make the border. Maybe they'll try getting in other places. Maybe they'll go to other cities. Maybe they'll start working here. Maybe they'll go home. But for the most part, there's somewhat of a stalemate, if you will, here in Tijuana, realizing that the situation is not going to improve. Eric?
Well, clearly tension on that side of the border, too. All right, William, thanks so much.
Well, Eric, Defense Secretary James Mattis says troops stationed along the U.S. border are there only for support.
The DoD, the Department of Defense missions do not involve military personnel at this time directly participating in any law enforcement. Law enforcement is left in the hands of the Customs and Border Police, who have the statutory authority to carry that out.
Secretary Mattis telling reporters that the long-term mission for the troops is, quote, somewhat to be determined. For more, let's bring in retired U.S. Navy Captain Bob Wells, who also served as National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney. Captain Wells, always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Arthel.
Absolutely. How is a TBD mission interpreted by the 5,900 active military personnel, those who are commissioned to carry out the mission?
I think the personnel are going to do their duty and their mission. I think it's important to really listen to what Secretary of Defense Mattis stated. The law enforcement mission is a Homeland Security mission, a Department of Homeland Security mission. DoD has a Homeland Defense mission. The United States government is on a whole-of-government approach. We needed to have this different skill sets that are part of active-duty military engineers to support the Customs and Border Protection. So I think the soldiers there, in terms of the short-term mission, are doing their particular tasks to support the broader mission of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection. The TBD is just that. This is a challenging political environment which has a lot of different drivers that involve our partners to the south, Mexico in particular, but also the Central American countries where these good people, these poor people, originate from.
So we're showing pictures of the troops putting up barbed wire, and you're pointing out that this is an evolving, sort of many moving parts here. So is that the explanation as to why a mission would be undetermined as the troops are already in place?
I think so. I think the previous segment we focused on Tijuana and what was happening there with that group that comes here. Mr. Mattis was down there in Texas and looking at the new Camp Norma, the newest bridge that's coming across between the Rio Bravo and also southern Texas, which is for commerce. So we're trying to essentially strengthen the capabilities to support less access and to protect also the military mission inside of Texas. But I think the entire area there between Brownsville all the way to the west along the Rio Grande Valley is very important with regard to supporting Customs and Border Protection and their enforcement along a large area. And that's, I think, what the mission is really going to achieve in the near term.
And I understand that General Mattis is saying that it's possible that in a week to 10 days, the troops will have accomplished the task that you mentioned. At that point, will the president withdraw the troops? Do we know yet? Or what's your take on that?
I think General Mattis is working with the U.S. Northern Command, and in particular the 1st Army, which is down there at Camp Fort Sam Houston in Texas, and they're looking at the actual tasks that need to be achieved there with the actual troop set. So if the forces rotate out, that's a good thing. I think looking at understanding the terrain and the actual area in support of Homeland Security is an important part of how long troops will be there. Well, the final point I wanted to make, though, is that back to Mr. Mattis, Homeland Defense mission is a mission of the Department of Defense, and border security is national security as well. And it's really a whole of government approach, and whatever to serve the actual objective of securing the border, that's an important role for them to play.
And Captain Well, you mentioned having troops potentially rotate out, which means you believe that there will be this presence of possibly 59,000 troops there for some time to come. I've got about 30 to 40 seconds for you, sir.
Yeah, I think so. I think the president announced that 10,000 was the approximate troop planning level, 5,900 total support forces, engineers, people that support logistics in particular to take care of the refueling responsibilities of the air and marine component of Customs and Border Protection. So if the mission lasts for months and months because of the circumstance with the caravan or with the border security mission, that is part of service. And I think those soldiers, all of them would be very proud to support that particular mission.
And you think about 5,900 is a good number. All right, Captain Wells, thank you very much for your analysis. We'll talk to you again, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Arthel.
Well, meanwhile, there's a war of words between Vice President Mike Pence and the Chinese president. They're back and forth at the annual APEC summit could affect our trade relationship with China. Dispute between the U.S. and China dominating APEC, the Summit for Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. For the first time in its history, the summit leaders were unable to come to a joint closing statement amid the divisions over trade. Now with more. Hey, Trey.
Eric, normally on the last day of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, leaders present a written declaration of agreed-upon ideas. But this year, amid tension between China and the United States, the conference ended with no consensus. According to reports, the issue of the World Trade Organization was a major sticking point. Vice President Mike Pence, on behalf of the United States, argued that leaders should denounce the organization and call for its reform. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill of Papua New Guinea, where the event was being held, pushed back against that idea, saying it was an issue that should be addressed at the World Trade Organization. This is Pence and Chinese President Xi Jinping exchanged jabs and remarks Saturday, with Xi Jinping criticizing the Trump administration's America First policies, and Pence saying, quote, "The U.S. will not change course until China changes its ways." The vice president referring to the $250 billion worth of tariffs levied by the U.S. against Chinese goods earlier this year. Pence reiterating the U.S. position that President Trump believes America has been routinely taken advantage of by China. Now, moving forward, Vice President Mike Pence and President Trump will be meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina later this month. And just a side note there, Eric, Vice President Pence likely expected to stay in the United States. So it will just be President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping there in Argentina to address these trade issues later this month. Eric?
Thanks, Trey. We'll certainly see what comes out of that. Thank you, Trey.
And that does it for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for spending your time with us here in the Fox News channel. Greg Gutfeld is next with his show, and for both of us, we'll see you.